There's just 1 minute to showtime.
The engines are on.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
When they wrote up the systems and the rule set that we use, did working people get to write a line? What class of men on pen and paper jotted down their clues? With capital, the heart of their design. When 90 million want a thing, but some shareholders say no. Which class of people get to have their way? The people read the fine print, say that this thing has got to go, and we'll start writing a new contract here today. Don't you know that hundreds will work and one man keeps the money? They don't think they gotta tell us why. When they say the new social contract, all the bosses will be gobsmacked and everyone will want a sign. Oh, yeah, everyone will want a sign.
Hello, cousins. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Social Contract. I'm your host, Nicolette, and as you can see, I am Jaredless again this week. But good news, he'll be back with us after this stint of work business he had to take care of. He'll be back with us next week. So our own Mr. Mayor Jared will be joining us again, and I'm looking forward to that. I'm sure you all are too. This will be another listening heavy episode. Because we've got going here. There's been bugs that have arisen and made themselves known to us as we've gone along. And apparently, whenever I share my screen, my computer doesn't like Chrome, so and that's what I run this on. So I usually use Firefox for everything, but it's easier to separate. Blah blah blah. Anyways, there is there was some sort of sound issue a couple of weeks ago when I was doing some screen sharing. So this time I will just be doing like how I normally do and reading you some facts and some figures and stats and normal, as per normal, what you've been able to expect from this broadcast. So we're working it out as we go. So, whoops, looks like we lost our camera here. Hang on a second. There we go. There's always something going on. Always something, huh? Connect. Not sure if you can hear me or not, but I'm working it out. Trying to. Come on. Come on. Okay, I think that did it. Yes, okay. Okay, sorry about that. Anyway, there's always issues when you're working with we all have the same American internet that doesn't ever really want to do what we want it to do. So another issue that we have come across in the last week. Last week I was trying to figure out why we weren't broadcasting to Twitter as normal, and that was because without knowing that until I had to Google it and find out. Twitter changed their policy to only allow premium accounts to stream live. So, as we see it, that is extortion. Just to have the right to be able to stream there, and we're not going to give Shmilan any money. So we have decided that we're also we always stream live on YouTube, but we'll look for another destination. Or we'll decide on another destination here pretty soon. About where else we're going to be simulcasting. So we'll have some info for you about that pretty soon. And hopefully everything will work its way out. We'll work all the buggies out and everything going on here. So as we get through here, let's see. Yes, the ticker is on. So if you were looking at the ticker and you maybe have read it, that is where information on where if you're enjoying the show, you can donate, a couple of bucks, and we'll put your name in the ticker as a thank you. So let's see here. Who is Paradise Flower? I'm not sure. I don't know how to answer that question. I'm sorry. I was checking the chat, but we can. I can chat with you live if you're on YouTube. Otherwise, you have to DM on Twitter because I won't be able to see your comments. But anyways, thank you so much for being here. I do appreciate it. I do appreciate you keeping me company because this has been a big week in news, and I'm getting used to. I'm getting to the. Okay, hello to the chat. Hello, are you time traveler? Thank you for being with us today. Yeah, and as always, let us know if anything's going crazy or wrong, and so I can't fix it, and there's nothing I can do. But what are you gonna do? Everything works the way that it works, and that's how it is. But again, this is a big week in news. And it looks like we're really just going to hit the ground running here. It was very strange for a long time with the campaign, the presidential campaign, that is, if there's another one going on. But because it was so quiet for so long, you weren't seeing ad campaigns, really. You weren't seeing, the smear tactics as normal. It was just, they kind of just left people to their own device, which is very suspicious, ultimately. And at the beginning, going back to the beginning of the year, Jared and I had discussed that this looked like a pretty standard bait and switch situation, where I had predicted it was going to be closer to September, but I think the assassination attempt on Trump moved up their timeline, by a few weeks, because they lost the element of surprise, because they really wanted to whip up a frenzy among Democratic voters, and the Democratic voters that they have lost, and pretty much anybody that was going along with their orange man bad strategy, and then throw somebody else in that nobody voted for, but that the DNC decided that they could just impart and put in there, and get Biden out. So they wanted you to see him, essentially decompose in front of your eyes. So you got very frightened, and it whipped up all this worry among people. And then it got to, I think that they just kind of ran out of time on that plan, and are just like, here, fine. And I had predicted it would be Gavin Newsom, because there wouldn't have been a whole lot of time for people outside of California to learn about his record or anything about him. And he, he has that very American white Protestant male, Kennedy in the right way vibe, that I think that people were, they were really going to bank on. And but Kamala Harris has really hit the ground running here, and we'll see if she's like, I'm doing it, and then I'm like, everybody's kind of like, okay. So we'll see if she actually becomes their official nominee. But if they go that way, that's a sure sign that they have decided to go into fundraising mode, because they know they're going to lose. And as we've talked about before, when you're playing the long game, and you can get out of a job you don't want to do in the first place and be responsible for things in the first place, but you can get people to donate money. In her first few hours, like almost $100 million or something. I think million. I don't think million. I think 100 million. Lots of millions, lots of many dollars were donated like immediately. And we're talking about people who are struggling here. This is not just necessarily coming from PACs or donors. This is coming from the people that they're soliciting that should not be giving money don't give money to a political campaign. Do not do that. I don't care if it's like the most believable situation and you're all the way behind it. Like, don't do that. They don't need your money. They're stealing from you. So they can get money elsewhere. The issue here is, it looks like they went right into fundraising mode, because there are issues with Kamala being the candidate that are both legitimate issues, and I won't say illegitimate, because that's kind of paints the wrong picture, but there's legitimate issues and there's non-legitimate issues, and the non-legitimate issues will be as strong of a factor as the legitimate issues. The people on the left and the people who've been watching her record this whole time, and the know that she's never received any delegates, first of all, that also, they don't call her top cop for nothing. She's a Zionist. She has, they're trying to rewrite her record and paint her as progressive, as, that she wasn't personally responsible for, not supporting or denying abortion fund and incarcerating many people in her time, and really elevating police and meeting with border control, and there's a lot of really bad things in her record that they're now trying to overwrite and be like, no, she's progressive, she's great. It's not true, it's a lie. And I don't care who they put into that position, they're still going to uphold the same bullshit values as Biden did. So I'm still not voting for them. It's still not happening. And that is those are the legitimate concerns, and just glossing over here because we've got other things to talk about. So just as a gloss over there, those are the issues that are just legitimate issues. Now compound that with all the non-legitimate issues like race and misogyny, the fact that she's a woman. I've seen some argument about that they have a problem with her being childless. So there's that. So that there's nobody's really, they're not going to save the day here like they think that they will. So which essentially says that they're ready to just take money and not take the job that they don't want anyway. And so that's where things stand at this point. They really have no chance at winning, and they don't want to. If they would have made a stronger showing with somebody that was less known to the public but looked more the part, then they would have gone with Newsom. But they did not, or at least have not at this stage. So that's where we are. Not a whole lot to say about that on that point. I think it's probably pretty clear, but I'm seeing a lot of really disgusting stuff coming from liberals where they really immediately jumped on the if you don't in a third-party vote, but it's all a vote for Trump. And it's like, well, I guess you better vote harder then. So that's where we are on that. And we will keep it coming at you as things progress, because that's what we do here is we talk about the madness in this country and abroad, and the frenzy and madness that we're causing abroad, which leads me to my other point that I wanted to cover, which is some really actually excellent news. It seems coming out of from the ICJ earlier this week. That's the International Court of Justice, which we know that Israel has already disregarded their rulings against them already before, and that America has said we will never abide by your rulings. So that's a good sign on a way to keep order and justice. So you've got that going on, but there's they essentially have gone farther in to have opinions on what Israel is and isn't, and what rights they have and what they don't have. And that has been really great as far as the opinion and how this will impact other countries' view of ensuring Palestine as a state, and recognizing that Israel is an illegitimate settler colony that is committing genocide. There's no reason to mince words here. So here, I'm going to pop over on my other screen real quick, but you'll still see my face. And I'm going to read this list of the summary. It's not super long, but it's a summary of what the ruling was that came through on the 19th. Yes, the 19th. So earlier this week. One is of the opinion, the court, ICJ, is of the opinion that the state of Israel's continued presence in the occupied Palestinian territory is unlawful. Two, is of the opinion that the state of Israel is under an obligation to bring an end to its unlawful presence in the occupied Palestinian territory as rapidly as possible. Three, is of the opinion that the state of Israel is under an obligation to cease immediately all new settlement activity, which about how they've been trying to sell the land off as fast as possible. There's been, I wouldn't say auctions necessarily, but like these public events that are just, blatantly advertised where they're trying to get Americans to buy up space in occupied Palestine. So lost my place here. Okay. Must cease immediately all new settlement activity, and to evacuate all settlers from occupied Palestinian territory. So that means everybody who's already there, essentially. It's saying you're not a legitimate location. It does use the word state, but it's not, it isn't the state. It doesn't have any claim to that land. 4 It is of the opinion that the State of Israel has the obligation to make reparations for the damage it caused to all the natural or legal persons concerned in the occupied Palestinian territory. 5. Is of the opinion that all states are under an obligation not to recognize as legal the situation arising from the unlawful presence of the State of Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory, and not to render aid or assistance in maintaining the situation created by the continued presence of the State of Israel in occupied Palestinian territory. So it's saying, don't help them, or you're culpable. Other places. And they managed to piss off enough people, and people have caused enough awareness to this situation that this could be very significant for the countries that do abide by these types of rulings, and who maybe have been on the fence about whether or not they were going to continue supporting or recognizing Israel as a state, even if they aren't sending them supplies necessarily, or money, or what, your smaller countries. 6. Is of the opinion that the international organizations, including the United Nations, are under an obligation not to recognize as legal the situation arising from the unlawful presence of the State of Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory. 7. Is of the opinion that the United Nations, and especially the General Assembly, which requests this opinion, and the Security Council, or which has, let me rephrase that, or just get my words out right. Let me try that again. Okay, so point 7 is of the opinion that the United Nations, and especially the General Assembly, which requested this opinion, and the Security Council should consider the precise modalities and further action required to bring an end as rapidly as possible to the unlawful presence of the State of Israel in occupied Palestinian territory. Okay, so in layman's words, what does that mean? It means that everybody all this time who has tried to get this to stop and has been fighting about this, if you've been part of or aware of the BDS movement, that's I told Jared this not long ago, and I talk about the BDS movement. He gets confused about what it means, it stands for, and I always get confused with the BTK killer, serial killer stuff. But the BDS movement is to boycott, divest, and sanction Israel, or essentially primarily Israel, and this has been going on for a while. But any country that's committing these kind of issues, to separate yourself publicly from them. But essentially, in layman's terms, it's saying that it's saying get rid of the sediments, tear down the walls, dismantle the settlements, and give it back to Palestine, and do it now. That's what their opinion is, essentially, and that's where we are. And that's really great. That's really great. Now, we know that they haven't abided by that whatsoever, or not that specific ruling, but the previous rulings against them that said that, hey, you are doing genocide, and we are recognizing that you are doing genocide. But what the greater impact of this is it's more of a social and awareness type of a situation, because it will ultimately, like I said, lead to smaller countries, or countries that maybe, let's say, felt particularly bullied or something by Israel, or felt like they were beholden in some way to cut ties, essentially, to cut ties and to put further pressure on Israel to cut it the fuck out. Now, there have been reports, obviously I'm not on the ground there, so I don't know what's going on for sure, but there have been reports, at least, coming out saying that a lot of businesses are closing down, that people are leaving, Israel, Israelis are leaving, in large numbers, that their economy is starting to struggle very badly. Good. And if that's to be believed, that's great, because it really needs to end the stronghold that it has on that region, and do the people in the neighboring countries, which are really upset about what they're trying to do. Yemen, who's pushing back, and they've traded some paint here in the past week as well, and Iran, who's like, quit it. And then these countries aren't going to stop. That's a big part of it too. These countries are going to keep going with all of this, and they will see this through, especially if Israel has or becomes more weakened. And we know that recently, Ireland and the UK, within their elections, have talked about recognizing Palestine as a state, as a sovereign state, and that Israel is an occupying force that doesn't belong there, and the other countries like Egypt and Iran and Yemen and things know that the ultimate plan, backed by the United States, is to establish the Greater Israel plan. And there's various maps that you can look up and see about this that will give you some idea about what that exactly means, because it's kind of a gray area, and that's the way they want it. They want to expand across these borders. And if you think about it, if they were unbothered and allowed to go on and do what they wanted to do to Palestine, which is, been going on since like 1947, but if they were able to really get the job done here, really speed things up, and really take over the entire area, it wouldn't stop with the borders of Palestine. It would they would usurp the, what a great word, right? They would usurp the, okay, they would go over the other borders of these neighboring countries at the behest of the United States, where it's a very, very strong and deep leaning partnership, where there's a lot of money and a lot of trade and a lot of commerce and a lot of natural resources and a lot going on there. So that's something to keep in mind as this goes on. And this is all happening as Netanyahu is a welcome guest set to, what's today? The 23rd? Is today the 23rd? Yeah, he's set to speak to Congress publicly tomorrow, which is fucking sickening and shouldn't be happening. And also there's been, all these, they're trying to, the news is now, as they're trying to make Kamala Harris seem like a progressive and rewrite her own history, are saying she's denying him. She's not going to meet with him. Yes, she is. Yeah, she is. They're going to meet at the White House privately. And if it hasn't already happened, he's been here for at least a day, I think, and landed yesterday maybe. And then he's going to speak publicly. She's just not going to give him the public address that Biden was going to give, apparently going to give. I mean, who even knows how much of that shit was real? Very, very curious that he just absolutely dropped off the map during all of this. There were even stories as early as last night that were circulating, saying that he was in hospice care and wasn't going to make it through the night, which was a little dramatic as far as I saw, because we did see him at least upward, vertical a couple of days ago. So there was that. But beyond that, we don't really know, the full extent, or how far they were willing to take it. And also rushing the timeline and not giving themselves the kind of time to keep people scrambling may also have come down to he literally did deteriorate too fast. They were hedging their bet on this, but he, it seems like maybe it just did happen too fast. So that's where we basically are on that. We don't really have the answers. We're not going to have the answers. But whatever happens with him, they're definitely going to, rewrite the narrative on that as well and be like, oh, poor Biden, it's so sad, blah, 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 blah. No, it's not sad. He's been a bastard his entire life and part of some of the worst legislation for, the past 50 years. And he will always be, no matter what, somebody who has been on the wrong side of the most important, aspects of American and international life at the hands of the Americans. So it looks like I'm having some, it's kind of running slow. So I don't know if that's an issue on my end or whatever. It seems like there's always something crazy going on with everything. But we're gonna push through, because there really shouldn't be anything that's really stopping everything from working. I think it could just be what it looks like on my end at this time. So, well, we lost our camera again. So something is going on. Something crazy is going on. Come on. I don't know if it cuts my mic when that happens. I think my mic is still. This could be a Wi-Fi issue. Come on. Wakey, wakey. Wakey, wakey, wakey. Come on. Whoop. There we go. Come on. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Don't search for the device, just do it. There we go. There, I think we're back to normal. Maybe. Always something. Here, bear with me for a second. I'm going to close something down. And so I'm going to disappear from view for a second here. I'm going to try to fix something up. Do. Come on. Are we frozen again? Come on, come on, come on. Disconnect already. Okay. Maybe I've got it this time. Okay. All right. I had to go hard in because it was not. I don't know. I don't know what the issue is. It seems something's cursed when it comes to me doing this by myself. There's always something going on, but I think that we're back on. I think everything's copacetic now. I can see myself. Everything's moving in the right frame rate. So okay. All right. All right. Now where we were at. I can't remember what exactly I was talking about when everything went kaput, but I think that we're back on track here. But to kind of close out what I was talking about, we're in a very we'll see situation still. We don't know, where this is going to go, or it seems like things are changing by the minute at this point with the election situation, as well as because of the ICJ ruling and because of Netanyahu being here disgracefully to speak to Congress. And there has been a big movement online, at least, for protesters to try and interfere with that, or make it so he could be arrested in some capacity, if it was even possible. I don't know if that's even possible to do when you're on U.S. soil, where they see him as friendly. So I don't know. I'm kind of just vamping here a little bit because I want to make sure that everything's going to running the way it ought to be before I switch subjects. Because the next thing that I want to spend some time on is something that I think everything's a little bit haunted here, and as that goes, it should work the way that it should work, but it's always something. It seems like it's always something going on, but it appears I have the appearance here that things are working the way that they should. It's very odd because I've got a very strong internet connection. I just so happen to have that rarely goes down, so it's hard for me to be able to tell if it's my equipment and connection, or if it's something to do with a program that I'm using, or something I'm connecting with, or if I open a page somewhere. And it's not like my computer's on fire or anything like that. So everything from my end tends to always look like it's working well, and then there's just stupid issues that arise. So all right, it looks like we're pretty much back on track here. So apologies, for the disruption. I'll make it up to you with a topic that I am really into. I enjoy this talking about this and theorizing. Jared and I talk about that. He doesn't really like to talk utopia too much because it ultimately just makes people sad, thinking about what they don't have and should have, and then you kind of get into the way of people ultimately start to feel powerless, and yet they're being fed the message that their one vote counts, and that all this stupid nonsense. And if voting counted for anything, we wouldn't be allowed to do it. That's the bottom line as far as that goes. But what we're looking at here is, it also says live, and it looks like it's broadcasting, but I could be talking to no one at this point. I don't actually know. So we're just going to roll with it. But something that actually brought me into the whole podcast verse, because it was never really my ambition to do that, was I had put out a book that I'd worked on for a very long time, that was a companion to a movie that I had worked on for a very long time. And I started talking about the circumstances of how it came to be, because they were quite complicated and there was a lot of negativity around this situation. And I felt like, for the people that were fans, it was about Buster Keaton both. And there's a lot of fans of his, and a lot of people were following that, what I was doing at the time. So that's really how I ended up doing anything remotely like this. And I used to just broadcast straight onto YouTube, use YouTube Live, and I talk about it. But then as time went on, I had a harder time not saying things about politics. And I've mentioned this before, but by trade, I do write creatively. I make art, and but I also by trade am a technical and medical scientific writer. And over this, like starting, we started to see it really happening in earnest at the end of last year. but I also work in education in the same capacity, depending on what contracts I take. And ultimately, the contracts stopped because the companies, these people, they got dollar signs in front of their eyes and thought, we can do non-human workforce. We can just have all this stuff written by AI. And it was as stupid as you thought it would. So, but there are now books, they're educational books like on medicine and things like this that have been written by AI. And we're talking about the same database of information as like the Google AI, with like going through like one editor, like one very terribly overworked editor, or a very small pool of them. So as they're trying to figure out how to make this work when it's not working, and that's also, there's been a lot of warnings to people, like, don't buy books off of Amazon about mycology or foraging for plants, because they are misidentifying things, and it's it can ultimately kill you if you eat the wrong mushroom or the wrong plant or what have you. So there's a lot of bullshit, surrounding this whole AI automation thing. But that's not to say that it's going away, or that's not the future of things. And and I'm not the type of person that says no, we can't have that. Of course we can. That's time marches on. The future is the future, and that's what we've been aiming at for a very long time. But at this point where there's no legislations, the abuse is rampant, and there are jobs that absolutely should still belong to people. And if you're talking about education, about things that can potentially get people killed by misidentification, or that type of a thing, that belongs to human people like me, who knows the difference between telling you that a cure for suicide or help for suicide is jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. So, we need, and it can't just fall onto some beleaguered or overworked editors to figure all of this, massive amounts of content out, for both in print and digital. So that being said, that's how we got here. That's how I got here, is I just kind of blew up and got on this rant about that, this is happening. A lot of this is happening. It didn't just happen to me who lost a job. It's happening to entire industry that basically collapsed. And I'm still looking for work. And it's starting to kind of pick up a little bit in terms of what is available to people, because some of these places saw that this isn't going to work. We need actual people. But now they also expect, the people to come in and function like machines, for very low prices. So there's a lot of combating the industry that basically killed itself. So what got me thinking about what's the solution to this, other than legislation and give people their jobs back, is that because that's not going to happen, because these companies pay, they make donations just like anything else. They donate to these legislators and these Congress people to say, you're not going to do that, right? That's why we don't have universal health care, or why cannabis legality is still in dispute, and there's all these things. But what we have learned very importantly in the past few months, most of this year, is, and through what the opinions on Palestine, is that we're getting no action through legal channels, through congressional channels, but people have taken it into their own hands to do boycotts, and which is working, and speaking out on social media, which is working. So people have found some unity in these protests and these boycotts, and found some agency. And what that really shows is that people are desperate for community. They're desperate for a way that they can meaningfully impact the course of not only our own lives, which are turned absolute shit. I mean, we live garbage lives. I don't have to tell anybody this, but we do. We live absolute garbage lives that are getting worse, and we're getting squeezed at every turn. You can't even step outside and take a breath of air without somebody handing you a bill at this point. So my mind always kind of turns towards solutions, and I'm thinking, what can we do to do that? And my answer to this is that we have to start moving and building and creating unions, labor unions, outside of the scope of labor, because ultimately labor unions are laborers, workers' greatest asset against unfair treatment and by bosses, by corporations. Historically, that is the way that workers have their rights. That is why we have weekends. That is why we used to not have child labor. We had child labor. It stopped. Now it's back. So these are things that we have unions to thank for safety measures, and we know specifically that Biden it was getting a lot of credit for being pro-union. It was all horseshit because he was the one that broke up the railroad strike and said, no, you guys can't have weekends or sick days. Fuck you. So don't forget about that. That's really important information to remember, that when they start spinning this narrative about him being pro-union and such a good guy, and he was not, and he never was, and you can't point to one issue in his entire fucked up career of something good that he ever did for anybody else other than enriching himself. So, and then anybody who takes his place is going to follow those exact same ideals, and you can't fall for them being painted as something they are not magically. And we also know that when he was trying to get elected the first time, he made this laundry list of promises of things he was going to do and didn't do one of them. And then suddenly when he's on the campaign again, when they're saying, no, he's great, it's fine, he's great, everything up here is great, then made the exact same promises again if you elect him again. What do you think is going to come out of Kamala Harris's mouth or any other person they put into that? We're going to hear all the same promises again. We're going to hear this is the most important election of your lifetime, Jazz, again. Don't fucking buy it. So the point is, you cannot trust the government to do anything that they're supposed to do, that they are appointed to do. They're supposed to be representing us as the people. They are not. They are representing lining their own pockets. The end. If you look at how much money that Kamala Harris has accepted already up to this point, like over $5 million in IPAC money, excuse me. Donald Trump has accepted over $1 million. So these people, and that's the whatever, if you're wondering why there are foreign assets in our government, there definitely are, because that is the Israel PAC. That is, of us trading money back and forth. So there's foreign influence in our government. People want to talk about, the Russians, the Chinese are trying to break. No, they're not. This shit is happening right in front of our faces with our buddy countries, and it shouldn't be happening, period. So anyway, I digress on that. And it's all connected, because what I really want to talk about is that if we do this, or if we need leaders, we need people who've been in unions, we need people who understand the system better than somebody who's just a talking head like me, like a literal talking head. But the idea is that we are seeing that people are craving community. They're craving an opportunity to take part in something. They want to help people, and they want to help each other. And that's where we are at this stage. We're looking for ways to contribute that are meaningful, not where we're being told yakety yakety yak by the powers that be and by the arm of the media that does their bidding. We're tired of the bullshit. We're all tired of it. But we also know that we're living terrible lives and we need to do something about it. So if you looked at all the union formation recently over, Starbucks, the video game industry, which is great for them. I'm not a game person, so it's not going to affect me. But I am an artist, and I understand how that works, and I understand being used for it as a writer too. I understand being used and not having any protections. I understand all of that, and that's where this comes from. That's where this idea comes out of, because if there's a recent story going around about a group of tenants, never mind the list, right? Tenants that banded together, formed a renters union, which, there are many stories about this, but this one in particular is going around right now. Ended up getting what they wanted in the negotiation, and their rent got cut by half. And we know that living expenses right now are out of fucking control. So, and they're not capped, and they're not stopped, and no one's stopping this, because these lobbies are telling these politicians, you're not gonna do anything about this, right? And then it turns into political gridlock, and that's all they want anyways, because they don't want to be actually responsible for anything, and they want to line their pockets. So that's that makes them inherently untrustworthy and not a representative of the people. Like they're supposed to be. It's supposed to be a thankless job. They get free health care, universal health care, get anything they want, vanity things as well. They get 6-figure paychecks on top of, the payouts and the trips and the what have you, all the great things the benefits that they receive from this, because they're people that are, seeking celebrity status who don't have any entertainment value to offer. That's exactly what this is they want to be, look at AOC, for Christ's sake. She wants to be a celebrity. It's very obvious that she's trying to be celebrity. And for a lot of people, they buy into that. So if we had looking at that, just that recent tenant union concept, well, they're not labor. It's not a union based on labor, per se. Obviously, they've got to work to pay, but when we look at a tenant union, it's not wrapped up in labor. But if we as people just worked to the point of just, because ultimately, if you look at the numbers, unions really only protect a very small amount of the population. There are many, many people who are left out of that. We're talking elderly people who were never part of a union to begin with. We're talking about disabled people, which is disability is on the rise, skyrocketing here due to the words I can't say, but the long sickness, the fallout from the sickness, which is still evolving. So we're facing a big crisis as that. We know that homelessness is at an all-time high. We know that there are just people out there who have just never been part of a working union of any kind or any industry that doesn't just doesn't have that union, even though the ball is rolling on that. But the point is that there's a lot of people who are left out of this conversation who are just like, yeah, I would really like to be part of something that would benefit myself, my community, my neighbors. And I'm not talking about how you don't want to be, friends with your racist neighbor. I'm talking about on the whole of the idea of community, because we are all very, very disconnected from each other and very starved for that. And we don't realize that until, things like this Palestinian issue, which so many people agree on, comes up, and then we find out, oh, that's a community has been built. We have people, we're bouncing ideas off at the same time. And no matter really where you are on the political spectrum, most all people want the foreign aid and foreign dealings to stop and money to come back into the United States and improve our infrastructure, improve just our our modes of living. And being that there's also no regulations stopping these corporations from just inflating their prices, creating false bottlenecks. They just do this, and they're allowed to do this. The government, based on Reaganomics, is allowed to essentially corporations are essentially allowed to run amok in this country and do whatever they want to do. So the only way to stop anything like this is by organizing with that same energy and that same mindset that's been used to Palestine. Don't stop that, until it stops. But we're going to need new focus. But imagine if we took all that emphasis and willingness and community and communication and put that against the topic of universal health care. That would be creating something where then we thereby could not be ignored. We say, okay, we as the People's Union now say, if you do not right now put together a meaningful package of rules for universal health care, and I'm not talking ACA modifications, I'm talking universal health care, not M4A. That's horseshit. That was a non sequitur, nonsense, Bernie nonsense. If you know what Medicare and Medicaid system is like, that was really just another version of ACA, but worse. So what this ultimately would do would be to say, okay, we have created a union of a local chapter, a state chapter of this, and a national chapter. And we are working under the same umbrella of idea. And I'm just using universal health care as an example, but obviously this could be for, anything. This could be for, we can organize for, health care to, legalize cannabis finally, for the international recognizing Palestine, policy changes across the board, codifying Roe. These are just a few, things. And on the local level, it could be protecting no cop cities, protecting landmarks, protecting forest land. There are things at every level that this kind of uniting union could protect. And that's what we've got to look towards and look for if we want to be able to move forward, because we have to leverage our power and say, all right, well, if you don't give us, again, we'll use health care as an example. If you don't give us universal health care, we are going to boycott all these particular businesses, products, whatever. We're going to launch a general strike, and here are the parameters of that general strike. We are going to launch a credit and loan strike. where no one's paying their loan bills, their credit bills, or we're going or taxes potentially, the tax strike, a rent and mortgage strike. There could be and we're going to protest. We're going to have active protests. It's going to shut down highways and stop commerce, and but it would be an organized affair, just like when you see teachers unions out picketing, or UAW members out picketing, or what we just saw, like the writers and entertainment guilds out picketing. It would be the exact same scenario. We get in people's way. In the meantime, you lean on the structure of the union to try to help you get through these lean times. And until we have meaningful, again, in the example of healthcare, until we get meaningfully and get it passed, then we will not end our strike. And we will continue to do these things until we meet. Because in labor unions, when they go on strike and their needs aren't being met, and they want to negotiate their contracts, or they want better treatment or what have you, you have the union leaders meet with representatives of the corporation or conglomerate, representing, and then they just bicker back and forth about what we want, what you get, what we want, what you get, what we want, what you get. And then sometimes they don't meet up and they come back for more meetings. Sometimes they blow it up in the media and say the other person is being unreasonable, usually corporation, and the corporation will say the union's being unreasonable. But ultimately, a deal must be struck. So if we do not have the deal struck, we will continue to strike until the deal is met. So this can work in a variety of ways. You like I say, you join like a local chapter that is also part of a statewide chapter that is part of a national chapter. And we also know at this stage that not all unions are created the same, and sometimes they have bad leadership. And that comes down also to the idea of how they need to be run, which would be like a little non-traditional if you really want it to be effective, because things have to be done by committee at this point. One president in charge of everybody never represents all of the values of the entire organization or country or state or whatever. The single representative idea has got to go, because there's no checks and balances there, even though they're supposed to be. So if things are done by committee, where you've got an odd number of people who represent, here's the local, here's the state, here's the then these people all can kind of balance each other out in that way. But it should also be situations that are absolutely devoid, by like the established laws that they create, are devoid of any political affiliating. No endorsements, no donations that were accepted, no affiliations whatsoever. It has to work outside of the scope of local federal governments. It has to, or you end up in a situation where they could just be bought off, and you don't really get what you're paying into, because you pay dues every year, and sometimes they're very high. You pay these dues so that it can support itself and support you in times of strike. So that being said, there's a lot of things here that this can ultimately lead to make things better and fix these problems nationally, internationally, locally that we're facing. This could essentially have the ability to end housing crisis, the housing crisis, by bringing down, capping rents or capping mortgages, not letting these banks run amok, and just foreclose or take or do whatever it is that they want to do. This could create an environment where nationalization of utilities, including internet, but living utilities, could then become nationalized, and that includes big tech as well, which they potentially see on the horizon. A lot of these people see that coming, and they're very afraid of it, and they're paying the politicians to try to keep that at bay as well. But nationalization, uniting with people, and UBI, universal basic income, all essentially work in tandem together. So some people that are for, we could end up with another thing is like to say, along with the healthcare, if you don't pass a bill right now for meaningful universal basic income scenario, better taxing scenarios, then again we do the boycott strikes, rent, credit loan rent strikes, all that kind of a thing, as I mentioned a little bit ago. because some of these large companies are willing to concede on UBI because they see it as a low ball alternative. They see that they can kind of blind people with the idea that if they know that they are going to, no matter how stupid it is now, I want to put this in context. We all know that AI is stupid now. They'll put 6 fingers on somebody, their eyeballs will be facing backwards. They'll put 2 clavicles, like we see, or there's just weird body things, like we're like har, right? Or we see how the Google AI went, and then we see these stories of saying AI is collapsing because there was really no forward strategy. But that's not true. These industries that are making significant investments on these things are not going to give that up, and they're not going to go quietly with it. They're going to continue to develop it, and they're relying heavily on the big tech industries to do that primarily. And that's not to say it's necessarily a bad thing. It is the way that it is regulated and handled that it is a bad thing. Automation and AI can be a really good thing, and in 10 years from now, AI will be able to do human jobs across the board. Just give it another 10 years, and it's going to be a crisis, a literal, actual crisis. Living conditions will go from bad, what they are now, to untenable. We're talking about Mad Max future. We really are. I'm not being accelerationist about this. I'm being truthful, because the fact of it is they will be able to mimic and complete and do so many jobs by physical automation like robotics and digital automation a la AI. Now, AI can be very useful for things like exploring space or high-level quantum mechanics and mathematics and medicine, proposing how to find analyzing genetics and genes and these kinds of things. There are really good applications for AI. Not to mention there are tons of shit jobs that people should just not have to waste their time doing. So that's where we see UBI coming into the picture. But a lot of these big companies see UBI as a piecemeal situation where they're like, okay, we can give them a lowball offer. We'll give away ourselves, or we'll get the government behind this. We'll give them a tiny, tiny stipend a month, barely livable amount. We won't let it grow with inflation. We'll pay this very teeny tiny showy tax, the robot tax, but it won't actually amount to anything. But they will say, hey, we're giving you money for nothing. You don't have to work. That is exactly what should not be going on, because like I said, this is going to affect basically all industries sooner rather than later. It is coming. So a lot of these companies are starting to bandwagon the idea of a UBI by saying, hey, let's do it, because they see a way out of it. They see it as like the cheapest option, like basically paying a tax or paying like a bill, where in exchange they get 24 hour a day, 7 day a week, 365 a year workers who don't need anything, who can't unionize, who never get sick, who don't have children, and they can exploit that greatly. And we're talking about, another issue is just an insane amount of energy and that would produce and require. And those that we're not really at that stage yet in energy production. So, but they will figure it out. The gas and electric companies will figure that out. And that's another aspect of this as well. So there's a very negative side to this going forward into the future, but there's a very positive alternative, which is that if we band together under these types of conditions, these following, standard union practices, which again, I'm not an expert on, because I want to say I've never belonged to a union. I just think they're rad as hell, and I'd really like to be able to belong to something where I felt like I was able to make a contribution with my time and my effort and my skills, and that other people were able to do the same. And that is what community is. That that is what gets us public transportation robustly. That is what fights these powers that are taking away from us. These getting taxed and at absurd rates. That's what stops elderly people from having to pay property taxes. We just need to be able to get things into a place where they're not ridiculous. Everything is coming at us from all directions, and it's making life untenable. And that's where we are right now. And it's not going to get better unless it gets better. And that requires the same type of energy that we're seeing people wanting to use and come together on, that we saw after George Floyd's murder, and we saw after the Palestinian thing. And it seems like it always comes on the heels of something very negative. But if we are living in a very negative time, we are living in a very negative place where things, almost by the minute, almost by the day, you can account for having gotten worse than they were before. I can't imagine that there's, other than a very, very wealthy person out there, very many people at all that aren't worried about being able to pay their bills, worried about finding employment, worried about being paid what they ought to be paid. It's not just about finding that, that they can only get underemployment, And then when you hear these bullshit stories about the employment rate's so low and Biden did such a great job for unemployment, they're not counting people who have had to stop looking for work and maybe counting on a spouse if they can, or some of their, or maybe Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, something like that, because they have not been able to find gainful employment, and they're not counting underemployment. So it's like, yeah, if you're a NASA engineer, and you can't, you get laid off, and all you can find is McDonald's, that's underemployment. That is, you are not being paid for your education expenditure. You are not being paid for the years that you put into that industry. You are not being paid and valued for what you are able to do. Now, that's not to say that one is necessarily better than the other, but we can't have 10 billion McDonald's workers and no NASA. I'm just as an example here. You can choose any version of the events that you want. Somebody that uses their, and has an intellectual job and gets paid, tons and tons of money, is not fundamentally better than someone who is doing a labor job. But what they should all have in common is a labor union. And what we should all have in common is a union to back us up, that cover multitudes of things, like basically human protection, a people's union that covers our, gives us a better quality of life, protects the environment, makes local, state, regional, national changes to transition to greener technologies. But we don't have leverage unless we create the leverage. That's the idea behind all of this. And I'm sure that there are many more smarter people than me who have thought of this before. I just haven't seen anybody talking about it. I've seen people really enthusiastically getting behind the labor unions, for like McDonald's and Starbucks and in the game union most recently. And that is great. And that is, that is what we want. But we have to, and it's expanding through the landscape of labor. But as fast as that's happening, we also, like I said, have this big looming automation, AI, big tech thing happening that's going to give it the fight of its life. So everywhere that it can, it will render these people, they say, oh, you want to form a union? Form a union. Fuck you. We now run this entire corporation by robots. And who cares? We don't care. And that's what it is. Like, in fast food, I think you're going to see that very, very soon. You're going to see, and you have in some places, but you're going to see the orders being taken fully automated, and the food created in a robotic setting. And I don't mean like a literal, like, oh, robot, type of a situation. I'm talking about like a robot arm puts the lettuce, and then it moves down the conveyor, and a robot arm puts the burger. And, that's what I'm talking about. That is not that complicated. And frankly, like, just having one person walking around checking or refilling things, like, if a robot can do it, a person doesn't need to, honestly, which makes an even greater argument for UBI. But UBI has to be comparable to our needs and adjust for inflation. If we have something suddenly, the economy suddenly, goes tits up and inflates, then the value of that goes with it. It always needs to be tied into that. But what incentive? What I'm saying sounds insane, right? What is, compared to how you're living right now? You're going to shut this stream off or this video off and go, okay, great, whatever. Let's say, yeah, somebody really ought to do that. Because what incentive does our government have to do that on their own? Absolutely nothing. Because they're getting, their needs personally are being met. They are having the times of their lives. They are living wonderful lives with excellent health care and benefits. And when they don't do shit for it, they have a little, team of interns and small time guys doing all the work for them while they, boat drinks. They do what they do. and it doesn't have any value on our lives, but it allows these corporations to continue to tighten the noose around our necks and figure out ways to effectively destroy our way of life, so that and there is a bigger picture here as well, that they're putting cop cities in every major city. They're criminalizing homelessness, and then the rents and mortgages and food prices are shooting through the roof and making it untenable. So essentially, we're talking about okay, so people can't afford to live in houses. That makes them homeless, right? So they can't afford food, so they got to steal it. But it's also illegal to be homeless. So we need all these extra cops to round them up and put them into prison systems, which are mostly privately controlled. So we're really looking at this is where things are headed. It's really not conspiratorial, because these things, it's the domino effect. One begets another, begets another, begets another, begets another, because these things weren't all happening all at one time, or even if they're happening slowly over time. These corporations have people working for them night and day, trying to figure out what we can do, how we can make more, how we can have more, how we can get more. So if and there are, I think probably in about 90% of the United States, there are more prisons and schools or universities within, not every single state, but almost every single state. And that is not by coincidence. And the fact that they're mostly privately owned is not by coincidence. And the fact that they use prison labor in many, many states as free labor. Things that you use every day are created by prisoners who are getting paid literal change or nothing at all. And the prisons are very promotional about this fact. They're open about it. They're excited about it. They say to the other companies, "Hey, you want to, it's better than a worker, a free one." So that's where we really are, and that's where we are headed. And if we don't start taking the reins on situations like this and saying, okay, well, if the McDonald's and the Starbucks can unionize, why can't we unionize? Why can't we, as people who live in this area, okay, so say I don't have a rent, or maybe you're a homeowner, or you inherited your home, something like this. Well, why aren't you entitled to any sort of protection? Why do you have to pay massive amount of taxes to inherit something? Why do you have to be an elderly person paying an absurd amount of property taxes? Not all states have property tax, but most do. Why do you have to be beholden to Medicaid and having them try to make claims on your things after you die? Why do we have to live like this? Because it's ultimately funneling into being able to I don't want to say recreate a slavery system, because it never went away. It always just evolved as time went by. Not to be only obviously race-based, even though the numbers don't lie. But if what's better than a few slaves, many slaves, where and so this all makes we are all already slaves to capital. We go down the line and they make life untenable for people, because they can't afford to live anymore. So they end up in a situation that puts them into the prison system and ends up making them into slave workers. Look at everybody around you. Can you imagine that happening to yourself? Like, if you can't, you really should be, because you can't live in that sycophantic Stan world of like, I'll be a billionaire or a millionaire someday because I'm smart. I'm a smart one. I'm like the guys who makes these money. And defending them doesn't do you any good. Those people should not exist. They should be taxed out of existence. That's where we ultimately land with all of this, because the people with the money and the people who are able to make money unfettered and not stopped in any kind of a way, and these corporations too that aren't broken up in a smaller amount and not required to pay the amount of taxes that they should be paying, like in great measure. Corporations and the single billionaire people alike should all be under a situation where they are paying a market equal value of their taxes to this country, and the same with people in every single earning bracket. You should not be, if you are working at the lowest rung of society and you're getting paid like $7 an hour, You should not be paying more taxes than a billionaire who just farted and made like $10 million. So that's the whole idea. We are in an inequitable system, but we only fight that system by using the union ideology. If you look back over history, you see that anytime there was like a union uprising, uh, it usually resorted in violence, like mob violence, where they showed up at the boss's house and with the axe handles, and it wasn't a pretty sight. But these people honestly should be afraid of that. They should have that fear. Not that I'm not saying like go and do it. It would have to be under the right conditions, I would think, but just like it was for them. But they went much further for much smaller reasons. But that's where we need to be now. Looking at history, examining those scenarios, and taking that kind of those lessons and those ideals and parting them into our modern society and saying, okay, well, what's the best way to get people together? Well, unite over ideas, number one, because whether you are far left or far right, you pretty much want more money and you want to be able to live. And if you are also more exposed to people in your community, and you realize your impact is directly helping someone, like you literally like, here, I have the ability to make socks. I have made socks and you need socks, and I have given them to you and your children. And now I know that even though I made it at my time and my expense, you have something that you didn't have before that you need. That's just an example. Or, when we can parlay our strengths together to help each other, then some of the ideology tends to drop away. We are so divided from each other. Even with the internet has divided us more than it's united us overall, because it is kind of driven everybody down their own little rabbit hole into believing feeling very isolated. And that's exactly what, these corporations and these high rollers want, is you to be divided from each other so that you don't realize the strength that you have when you unite. So if we unite and we literally are able to contribute something, be part of something, whether it's even just like, just following some rules. If they say, can you show up here and you can strike? Yeah, I can. Can you, or and picket? I should say, can you boycott these companies? Yeah, I can. It's not always about putting your life on the line, or saying you can't go buy groceries because we're boycotting Kroger Corporation. It's not always that. There are ways for people to contribute, and it's very, very important that these ways are shown to people and explained to people, and not talked down or condescended to people. Because if people are made to feel stupid, then they don't want to hear what you have to say anyways. So we have to talk to people and meet them where they're at. And when you are able to literally see the value of your presence, and the value of your work, and the value of your word, and the value of your thoughts being used for something, then the ideology tends to drop away from people. And we start seeing the impact of our collective works, feeling like we could pat ourselves and each other on the back for it. And then the divisions, and I'm not talking like, that's not utopian. That's just human nature, essentially. Like, there becomes a focus where you have to create your individual focus as an individual, and only focus on yourself, because you can't be worried about other people because you're almost underwater, you're drowning. But if you can give a little bit and get a little bit, and give a little bit and get a little bit, and everybody grows stronger and stronger. And then these, the collective mind starts being able to work for itself and for each other. And that's the only way forward, especially as like I said, we're facing an automation and AI crisis. We're already being squeezed to death and rubbed out in a lot of ways, and put through, into a homelessness to prison pipeline. These things aren't coming. They're here. They're happening now. You're seeing the beginning of it. Plus, in the midst of this, a dying planet. So that needs addressed now. No planet, no argument. That's all what it ultimately comes with too. And I realize I've had some ups and downs here with my tech, and it seems like everything's been going on at least this last part. And I think we'll probably come to about a close here. But I want to kind of implant this idea in your mind that even if you don't know how to go about this, like steal this idea, run with it, take it, it's yours, I give it to you. I know I couldn't be the only one that thought of this. I just, in my sphere of seeing things and hearing things, I'm just the only one who has really heard anybody talking about forming unions beyond labor that just simply represent people who exist in this country. Tenants union, the tenant unions are kind of getting, renter unions are getting onto that, but there are so many things that we could apply our collective skills to, that we're just sitting here waiting for politicians to get on board, and with no incentive to do so, and they're not going to do so. But what they are incentivized to do is what the corporations hand them money to do, what they want. And that is why, living in this Reaganite hell that we live in, you have to know now it's not going to get easier and it's not going to get better. But if we can unite our abilities together outside of that structure and put pressure on that structure and say, I don't care what the corporation is paying you, we're going to strike and boycott and picket everything forever if you don't give us health care right now, if you don't clean up the environment right now. We're not talking, oh, it takes so long and incremental. No, incrementalism is over. We don't have time to waste. The death rate of people now is dropping below what it's ever been before. It's starting to lower. So people are dying. The environment is killing us. Natural disasters, right, left, and center, are happening like constantly. Things that don't happen in certain areas are happening in certain areas. Things are going crazy as that goes. Everybody, I think a lot of people in the global south already know this. They've lived really horribly, mostly at the hands of the United States, one way or another, tampering with their government or stealing their resources or, what have you. It's a tale as old as time. This conquest idea has got to stop. And when people are talking about late stage capitalism, that's what they're talking about. But late stage capitalism will just keep late staging and getting worse and worse and worse. There's no stop, like, oh, well, we've hit the bottom of capitalism, you can't capitalism anymore. No, it will keep going unless there is something put in the way of that, and that is the will of the people. So I want to leave you with that. Take that idea and run with it, talk about it, tweet about it, whatever you want to do. But if you are in a union, or you know people who are, or a thing or two about organization or organizing people, that's a big part of where this starts, because a lot of us are just kind of ping-ponging around like, oh, I wish I could do something, but don't know what to do, don't know where to go, don't know where to start. But it starts with people who are able to organize and know fundamentally how to build a union, not just like, talk about it like me, but actually know what to do. So I hope that this has been helpful in some way, and I'm really glad to have gotten the opportunity to talk about it. Thank you for being here with me to listen to it and putting up with the tech problems. Every time I try to solve a tech problem, something else comes up. So I just kind of keep trying to just homogenize and fix as I go. And I think hopefully one of these weeks will come up and we just won't have any issues that we have to deal with. But, in dealing with the American internet, I think we all are in the same boat as far as that goes. So I appreciate you putting up with me for as I had to deal with it. And I don't know what's come out. I don't know what I'm being heard whatsoever. But I hope so. And next week, Jared is going to be back with us again. I'm pretty sure. And he will, probably want to catch up on a lot of the things he's missed. So we'll defer to him and see what he wants to talk about a lot, and it'll be glad to have him back. I'm going to be very feral by that point. Like, oh, I have to share a time. I'm not allowed to talk the whole time. Okay, like. That being said, you can always watch our old episodes on our YouTube channel, which is at Last Minute Politics. We have a whole list of them there where you can stream all of our old episodes. We are also on Rumble as Social Contract Pod, I think. And we will get back to you probably by next week on where else we will be live streaming going forward. It may be Rumble, maybe Twitch. We don't quite have that decision made yet. So we will let you know when we know. And as always, the best way to get a hold of us and the best way to get updated information is to follow our Twitter, which is the number one social contract. And you can DM us there if you want for ideas about things to talk about or questions, comments, that kind of a thing. We hope to hear from you. Let me check the chat one more time before I shut this down. Yeah, they were having some trouble with the chat. Tax mega churches and heritage foundations. Yeah, stop taxing people 65 and older and in certain brackets. Yeah, that's it's true. These things need to stop, and we need to live in a more tenable communal society. So I hope that this has been of use to you, and I will see you next week with co-host Jared, and I appreciate you. So take care of yourself and each other. Stop doing fireworks. It's over. and be safe and well. So take care, everyone.